Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the business of sports.
Our aim is always to leverage the global appeal of football.
Having representation in college sports is even more important than pro.
10% of Americans now claim soccer to be their favorite sport.
We estimate the youth sports audience has $3 trillion in spending power.
The nature of baseball is it is worldwide and it is global.
I'm very happy for the WNBA and how the NBA has embraced them.
Sportsbooks are not going anywhere, and sports betting is only growing.
We have a super team running this league, and this league is here and it's here to stay.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Vanessa Perdomo Maglione.
And I'm Randall Williams.
Michael Barr is off this week. Coming up today, we're talking about prediction markets with the CEO of Novig, Jacob Fortinsky, which recently launched nationally.
They also just announced a partnership with the New York Mets, becoming the first prediction market to sign a deal with an MLB team.
We also will hear a little of a conversation I had alongside Bloomberg TV's Romaine Bostick with Jake Paul. But first, let's run through some headlines taking over the world of sports, starting with the story that took over last week in sports news, but the deal died before it even got started. FIFA decided not to go through with their initial proposal to look for outside private investors. Randall, what happened?
So FIFA had a deal with Joshua Kushner's Thrive Capital that would have valued a potential for-profit arm of FIFA at $20 billion. The amount of money that would have been invested was $4.2 billion that would have then been distributed amongst FIFA's 211 members, which roughly is $20 million per federation, per soccer federation. And so, of course, UEFA, who is responsible for all of the European teams that competed in the World Cup, that compete internationally. UEFA had a big stance against this. CONCACAF came out against it. And ultimately, they really killed FIFA's plan. It lasted less than a week.
When this was all unfolding, we were, constantly talking about it, constantly checking in on what was going on. I didn't think it was going to go through, but I didn't know it would die so easily.
I thought that it was going to be a bigger fight than it was.
Like they would go through to the vote.
Right, just because the timeline. Of course, Gianni Infantino has talked about expanding the tournament to 64 teams. And that vote, I believe, is or was scheduled for the middle of August. And then the vote on the investment would have been in September. Therefore, the investors would have been able to cash in pretty early. And we didn't even make it that far before I think UEFA just really stomped out the plans.
One of the things even, too, is that UEFA came out and CONCACAF came out, but also FIFA employees came out and said this was a Gianni Infantino plan and we had nothing to do with it. So now it kind of looks like his presidency might be in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the plan is that the idea that some of these soccer federations need money is not foreign to anybody. I mean, look at the World Cup in the round of 16 and the teams that are left. A good portion of them are European. And the reason for that is because they have soccer systems set up so that, some of their national stars can compete very early on and then they go on to play in the Premier League and come back and compete nationally. But for Gianni Infantino, his sort of rebrand over the last couple of years to be one of the top sports executives in the world, alongside, of course, a Roger Goodell, an Adam Silver, a Rob Manfred. I think he's sort of been on a campaign, and this would have been part of that. And part of that campaign would have been a rise in his earnings. He's reported to make between $5 to $6 million. And with this potential raise, it would have saw him get at minimum 5 times that. And so at that point, I wonder.
So part of this deal was him getting more money.
He would have gotten a raise as well. Now, the amount
that was seen in the proposal?
It was. It was reported by the Times of London. It was reported by a couple different places. Now, the number varies. The lowest I saw was 25 million. The highest I saw was 65 million, which, of course, is Roger Goodell money.
Right.
But I think FIFA makes a ton of money from the World Cup. And this is fresh off them making $15 billion. And so then you turn around and be like, okay, now we're going to sell stakes. We've made so much money. Let's make a little bit more. I think that there were a lot of federations who were like, whoa. Like, you did a great job, but not that good. Giles Turner, who's our managing editor, he made the argument that the number was too low. That if this was an offer that the soccer federations could not refuse, if FIFA valued its for-profit entity at $100 billion, then
and was able to give each federation, they were only going to give them $20 million.
Right.
Each,
so now what if it's $100 million that they're giving? Mm-hmm. That makes it probably a lot easier or a lot harder to refuse.
Right.
But $20 million, France, Spain, Portugal, they're like, I'm good.
Yeah, they didn't need it. So do you think this puts his presidency in jeopardy? It was pretty much a lock that he was going to go forward and be the next president.
I do, because UEFA has not turned around and said, you know what, we forgive you. Mm-hmm. They remain stern, saying we don't trust him anymore. And UEFA is the biggest opposition for Gianni Infantino. And that also, one of the things that's happening at the same time is FIFA has media rights that are going to go for sale. And they are expected to include the hydration breaks. UEFA does not like the hydration breaks. And so this brewing battle between UEFA and FIFA is not going to end. Even if Infantino does win his presidency again, they're going to continue to fight him. But if he doesn't, then UEFA has defeated him. So I think this battle is going to go on probably for several years.
It'll be really interesting to see. I mean, we know they want to keep the hydration breaks, but like having the hydration breaks be in the 2030 World Cup where it's based in Spain and Portugal and Morocco, it doesn't seem like it would go off very well, even for the fans that are in the audience. Right. The next thing that we obviously had to talk about is the MLB trade deadline and how the Dodgers just continuously get better, even though they were already the best team in baseball.
Yeah, I think dynasties are good for baseball. I wouldn't say I'm rooting for the Dodgers, but I do root for a good story. And sort of this whole narrative that the Dodgers are unbeatable. But if you look across the standings, the Dodgers seem to be the most beatable fantasy team ever. They have a stacked lineup that they still have to win the championship. But ultimately, like, what does this mean for the CBA negotiations? And everybody is up in arms about what this will mean for those and the Dodgers' supremacy, I might say.
It is. I mean, but baseball is just a game where you can lose games and you will still be the best team in baseball. So maybe they are the most beatable, but it doesn't change the fact.
Yeah, I think that they can still turn it on in the playoffs as we saw last year. But if they lose, like, I think any argument for a salary cap probably dies with that.
Even if it shows, you don't need to have the most expensive team to win. Well, we see that every year, though.
Right.
We see that every year. Okay, the last thing we have to talk about is the merger that was announced last week with MVP and the PFL that will now make them the second biggest combat sports company, or, in MMA and boxing. You report a lot on the UFC. How do you think this? Do you think Dana White even cares that this happened? Do you think the UFC will ever see anyone else as a competitor?
I don't think the UFC is even concerned, really. The UFC has been doing well, although they lost $30 million on their White House fight. They spend a lot of money on the show. And the reality is there's just not a lot of mixed martial arts promotions that can fill up a 20,000-seater arena. And if you can't do that, you can't compete with the UFC. The UFC sells out Madison Square Garden, they sell out T-Mobile Arena, and they sell out arenas around the globe. The PFL and MVP are not there yet. I've been to a PFL fight. It was at the Madison Square Garden Hulu Theater, I believe is what it was called when I attended. It's not the same as going to a garden. So I think the PFL and this merger have a good ways to go. But I remain interested in seeing if they can compete with the UFC, because the UFC has had a dominant presence over mixed martial arts forever.
Now, we asked Jake Paul about this on Bloomberg TV, and he had some interesting thoughts on UFC as well. So let's listen into that conversation. Here's a small part of my conversation alongside Bloomberg TV's Romaine Bostick with Jake Paul, co-founder of MVP Nakisa Bidarian, and PFL CEO John Martin.
There is sort of a competition with Dana White and UFC. And I am curious as to how you're positioning this new MVP up against that. I mean, they've got obviously the big backing with TKO, the big deal with Paramount and all that. So you're going up against a force in terms of, from a business perspective and probably in a lot of other ways as well. Are you staring him down head on? And are we making too much of that?
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Yeah, it's war as far as I'm concerned. We're here to make MMA great again.
Yeah.
And there's so many things going on behind the scenes, back and forth. Mostly them attacking us, manipulative things. I can't even be in my own brother's WWE matches because TKO has blocked it. They don't want me to get any publicity from the WWE.
Yeah.
So there's so many things going on behind the scenes. It's war, and it's only going to get crazier. But it's Coke versus Pepsi. It's Nike versus Adidas. This is exciting. And we're 5 years in with this new relationship. They're 30 years in. So we're the new young, hungry kids on the block. Dana White, was at a press conference, didn't even know who was fighting or what he was talking about, just berating a reporter. They're old. They're worn out. They're public. They're like, hey, we did this.
Yeah.
And we're coming to eat their lunch. And they should be scared, and they are scared. That's why they're doing these tactical moves behind the scenes. And this is beautiful. This is capitalism. This is entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And this is the game of life. So it's very exciting.
Jake, you're doing something that I don't know if you did this when you set out, when you created MVP. When you created it, people kind of had this idea that you're an influencer and this isn't real boxing. And now you're acquiring one of the biggest players in mixed martial arts in this game. Do you think you changed the perception of what people think you set out to do here?
I don't know. I don't really care. I think, people always have some sort of opinion, and I just prove with my actions and words. I do definitely talk a lot of smack, but I just don't really care. We're doing it regardless of what they think. So I would say the track record proves that I've made a more of an impact in the sport of boxing than any boxer that's alive today. And no one could argue that. I could sit there and argue. True. You shrug your shoulders.
I would quibble with that a little bit.
Who would you say that?
More than Tyson? You said alive today?
Outside of Tyson, outside the ring? You said outside the ring.
Oh, you said outside the ring. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the sport of boxing. Oh, okay.
Not in the ring, outside the ring. Actually helping fighters.
Romaine, who do you think has made a larger impact than Jake outside of the ring for other fighters?
For other fighters, I don't know. I can't quibble with that. I thought you were talking about in terms of boxing as a sport.
Inside the ring,
and look, I don't take anything away from Jake. We all know that he brings a lot of attention to the things, and the smack talk is a big part of boxing.
It's way more than attention.
Explain that.
It's actual change. And me grinding on business calls and working with fighters and teaching them about branding. The attention and the posting is actually such a minimal part.
That's the easy part.
That's the easy part.
That was influencer, boxer, and co-founder of MVP, Jake Paul, alongside his co-founder, Nakisa Bidarian, and PFL CEO, John Martin. You can hear more of it now on the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. Get that on Apple, Spotify, and the Bloomberg Business app, or wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up, we'll talk about prediction markets with Novig CEO Jacob Fortinsky.
That's straight ahead on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. For Randall Williams, I'm Vanessa Perdomo Maglione. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Vanessa Perdomo Maglione.
And I'm Randall Williams.
Michael Barr is off this week, but a few weeks ago, the three of us had the chance to sit down with the CEO of Novig, a prediction market that has started to make some waves across the industry.
Following a CFTC designation, Novig was able to expand to operate nationwide. On top of that, they recently became the first prediction market to partner with an MLB franchise, having signed to be the official prediction market of the New York Mets.
Novig CEO Jacob Fortinsky joined us in the studio right before he made the announcement. Let's take a listen to that conversation.
Jacob, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports. My goodness, the World Cup is behind us. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's like the third place match was better than the first place match. But anyway, it's like your thoughts about...
There were certainly a lot more goals.
Yeah, really. You tell me, your thoughts about the World Cup.
Yeah, it was one of the best sporting events I'd ever seen. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Since I was 8, it was a dream of mine to go to the World Cup, and it was great to see Messi and all of my idols in person. I think it was an incredible tournament. I think Messi's performance, probably will go down as one of the greatest sporting performances of all time, especially at his age. It's, LeBron-esque even greater than that in some ways. I think the third place game was. I kind of wish that were the final. Those 10 goals, I mean, that was crazy. 2 in the last 5 minutes. But the whole tournament was incredible. We saw incredible growth on our platform, and I think, I really hope this marks a shift in how Americans view soccer. Unfortunately, the U.S. men's team didn't quite meet expectations, but I think it really, gave Americans a sense of the passion and why this is such a beautiful game.
A lot of hot takes in there for me, but
you said greatest sporting performance of all time.
Greatest sporting performance of all time.
One of them.
Really interesting. I mean,
that's hot.
I think it's a hot take considering he walked a good amount. But I'm not trying to turn down this legacy that is Messi. I think he's incredible. But I do want to talk about the growth that you said you were seeing on Novig and just how important these massive moments are for growth for you guys.
Yeah, I think for us. As a company, it was huge. I think we saw more users come to our platform during this period than any other event in our company's history. Saw hundreds of millions traded on the platform, and I think in a macro sense as well, it was huge for prediction markets. I think it really is this moment where prediction markets are becoming mainstream. People are starting to understand not just that prediction markets exist as an alternative to sports books, but really why they're better. And they, I think, are starting to understand the fundamental difference and the value that prediction markets provide. So yeah, these huge moments are always, a pivotal moment in this industry. The World Cup, one of the aside from the Super Bowl, the most watched events of the last 20 years. And people want in on the action. It's fun, especially for a sport that you're less familiar with. I think placing a trade on the outcome, whether it's Messi to score a goal or there to be, I had a lot of friends that said, oh, soccer is so boring. No one ever scores a goal. On every single game, I'm going to place a trade on the under because, I think I'm going to win. And at the very least, it'll be a hedge. It'll be either be a very fun match or I'll win some money. And so people are starting to, I think, deepen their engagement with the sport and with the event. And, it's been awesome to see.
So major sporting organizations are embracing Novig, and that includes like the MLB and of course the New York Mets. I wonder from your perspective, why do you think we're seeing more organizations who are willing to sort of shake hands with prediction markets and other organizations like yours to further demonstrate business?
It's a great question. So yeah, we're very proud to be an authorized prediction market of the MLB and to sign our first big team deal with the New York Mets, which is the team that my family has rooted for generations, and it's really awesome to sign that partnership. I think we're the first prediction market to sign any deal with the MLB, and I think you see more institutional adoptions of prediction markets because they're better from a regulatory perspective. They're more consumer friendly. They're more fair. They're more transparent. And I think for so long, sports betting was seen as this sort of shady operation. There's sort of a taboo around it. And the real reason why that's the case is because the house always wins. It's rigged against everyday sports fans. That's the reason why sports betting feels kind of icky sometimes, is that 99% of sports bettors lose money. And what prediction markets do is create a level playing field where winners are welcome. Instead of betting against the house, you're trading against other real sports fans. And so that I think is something that is more palatable for these large institutions. And, I was listening to your podcast from December where you're talking about how prediction markets should scare the sports leagues. And I think at that time, which is only 8 months ago, it did feel like the Wild West, so to speak. I think now things have changed a lot. You see more rules and regulations around this category. And, it's something that we're very excited to pioneer is, being a leader in integrity and responsible trading and making sure that we have the most transparent, fair, and consumer-friendly platform in the industry.
So I do wonder from that perspective, because not all of the organizations have not just with yours with Novig, but not all sporting organizations like the NFL and NBA have embraced them. They've had some conversations and are continuing to evaluate different business propositions. But from your perspective, is this controllable? We've seen on the gambling side of things, and not necessarily the prediction market yet, but we've seen a good amount of scandals, I'd say, specifically in the NBA and the MLB. And so with prediction markets coming in, do you think that it adds another layer of potential chaos, or do you think that there is a level that the sporting organizations and organizations like your own can sort of shake hands and be like, listen, this is how we're going to regulate. This is how this is going to be different. Which do you think they're both possible, regulation and the partnerships, or how are you viewing it?
Totally. I mean, our view, which I think is frankly different than some other prediction markets, is that regulations around this category are not only inevitable, but they're necessary. People want to feel like there's some guardrails and there's some rules around this category. No one wants to feel like this is the Wild West. This is why we're against this happening offshore on blockchain-based exchanges. We think this should be regulated, and I'm encouraged by the federal government's attitude in how they're addressing this category, ensuring that trust and integrity are the priorities. We actually started as a state-regulated business. And so I've dealt personally with state regulators and federal regulators. And there's not a doubt in my mind that the federal government is far more capable and ought to be the ones sort of overseeing this category. I think it's much easier to catch suspicious trading activity, whether that's on insider information or people trying to manipulate outcomes. It's much easier to catch that type of activity at a federal level, because they're treating it like an exchange. The regulators are technical regulators. And so, I think that's why the MLB and the NHL, and I think increasingly other sports leagues as well, are getting confidence that this really should be done at the federal level. Not to mention that it's just better for consumers. In a nutshell, just to simplify it, what we're doing to sports betting is kind of what Uber did to rideshare or what eBay did to e-commerce. We're cutting out the middleman, allowing people to trade directly against one another, rather than this intermediary that's taking a VIG, these sort of hidden fees from the two parties. So it's more social, it's more transparent, it's more fair, and I think that's why you see this shift in sort of institutional adoption of these platforms.
I'm assuming that's where your name comes from.
Yeah, exactly. So just to give you some background, I started the company with my co-founder Kelechi, our senior year in college, and we, came from a trading background, and then we were sports fans, and we then got gravitated to sports betting, and it just shocked me that there's over $2 trillion bet on sports, but the only way to bet is against these shady casinos. They market themselves as platforms where you can win big, and then in reality, the second you make any real money, they kick you off. It's really the only industry that bans their power users. The people that want to trade the most get frozen out. And that shocked me. They can just kick you out just because you make some money, just because you know ball, right? And so that's why then I saw all of my peers getting just kicked off of sports books. I was like, there has to be a better way. And people I think sometimes view this current moment as just because of this sort of regulatory shift that's occurring, where this is going from being regulated by the states to the federal government. But I think it's actually much deeper than that. It's really a shift in consumer behavior. Sports fans are increasingly viewing this as a financial product. Part of the game, so to speak, is trying to make money. And they're interacting with sports markets the same way they're interacting with, trading GameStop or trading Tesla options or Dogecoin. And so people have this more trader mentality, and they want to trade on a fair, level playing field, not against some sketchy casino.
We're talking with Jacob Fortinsky, co-founder and chief executive officer of Novig. Get it, folks? Novig, which brings me to the next point about your business model, because you're not really taking any fees from traders. How is the business model set up?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, we are basically transforming this model of betting against the house to creating a fair level exchange, the same way you trade stocks or trade, options or any other type of financial asset. So right now we do have minimal fees on live trading volume as well as on parlays or combination markets, and we don't have any fees on straight markets. So right now, you and a stranger each put up $10, winner gets $20. In the future, we likely will introduce minimal trading fees, but just to put things in perspective, we'll be charging about 0.5% on total volume, whereas platforms like DraftKings or FanDuel often charge over 10% in total. So it's really
they're going to get their cut.
Yeah. So just to simplify, it's like you and I each put up $100 on Red Sox Yankees. On Novig, winner is getting $199, and on another platform might be $180. And so on Novig, you're basically getting a similar experience that you might be used to, but you're getting 3 to 5% better prices on essentially every single trade. So in the long run, you're more than 10 times more likely to be profitable. And even if you're not, it's you know, your money will stretch out further. It's a more fair system. And so, you know, I think people feel like they actually have a realistic chance of making money. I mean, the core Novig user is someone who is, basically just a ball knower. They're a sports fan. They have some thesis on why something's mispriced, or this player, you know, LeBron's not playing tonight, so, you know, I think this player is going to have, you know, more assists because they'll be taking up the ball or whatever it is. And on Novig, you actually have a real chance to monetize that information, your ball knowledge, so to speak, whereas that's not really possible on sports books.
There's so much more to talk about in the prediction market space and how someone breaks into the industry. So coming up, we will continue our conversation with Jacob Fortinsky, the CEO of Novig.
That's straight ahead on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. I'm Vanessa Perdomo Maglione with Randall Williams. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
Out here in the middle of these acres, it can feel like you're the only person on Earth. That's how it feels when you're struggling with your mental health. But you don't have to feel alone. Find more information at loveyourmindtoday.org. Brought to you by the Huntsman Mental Health Institute and the Ad Council.
With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm John Tucker. The U.S. Senate has passed legislation that would increase debt limits for small businesses to give them expanded access to bankruptcy benefits. The bipartisan bill increases the debt limit under Subchapter 5, that's the sanction of Chapter 11 designed to help small businesses, to $7.5 million. Congress temporarily increased the debt limit back in 2020, partly to aid small businesses during the pandemic. Small businesses typically enjoy a faster reorganization process under Chapter 5 of the Bankruptcy Code. As part of the Subchapter 5 changes, at least 50% of the debt must come from a debtor's commercial or business activities. Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois said in a statement, the legislation gives small businesses a cheaper pathway to settle debts. Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa said this bill would provide American families and small businesses the tools they need to regain their financial footing. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Vanessa Perdomo Maglione.
And I'm Randall Williams.
Prediction markets have become the hottest buzzword in sports, so we really wanted to dive deep on this topic with a real expert in the space.
So we bring back into the conversation the CEO of Novig, Jacob Fortinsky.
I want to just step back quickly from when you founded the company, because when you founded it, you started as, I believe, like as a sports book and went to exchange model and now a predictions market. Can you walk us through all the different steps and how you got here and the reason for all those different steps?
Yeah, sure. So just take a step back. Like the North Star, the vision has always remained the same, which is to create a peer-to-peer marketplace for sports trading, so people can trade against one another rather than against the house. And at the time we started the company, that was not permissible at the federal level, which was always the sort of end goal of where we thought we'd be regulated, or where we ought to be regulated. So we started at the state level, trying to pioneer this exchange model. And we basically were told by the states, what you're building is a financial exchange. It's not a sports betting product. You know, you shouldn't be getting a sports betting license. You really should go to the federal government. And they basically told us explicitly in various states, you know, you're naive if you think we care about consumer protection or innovation. We really want to make as much money as possible. And we think that you're offering a lower margin product and you're going to cannibalize the industry. And in turn, you'll hurt our bottom line. And, you know, I was this naive 23-year-old kid thinking, oh, if I'm building a cooler product that's more innovative, that is sort of differentiated and more consumer friendly, then the regulators would welcome us with open arms, or at least partner with us to try to help us bring this product to market. And they did, exactly the opposite. It became very clear to me that their interests were really just aligned with the casinos. And it was really the consumer that was getting hurt. They were trying to extract as much money from sports bettors, sports fans as possible. It shocked me actually going to some of these sports betting conferences and hearing these executives talk about how do we milk as much money out of our users as possible? How do we send them push notifications when at 2 a.m. when they're likely drunk at a bar and when they're most likely to lose money? And it really sickened me. And so we started the company because we thought the industry was, frankly, messed up. And we wanted to really build a modern sports trading app for the future of sports trading in the U.S. It wasn't initially possible at the state level. Then we thought, this is going to end up at the federal level, but that would take us 2+ years to get regulated. So in the meantime, we launched a sweepstakes version of the app, which we've been operating for the last 2 years. And this week, we're now finally transitioning to what is hopefully the terminal state of the platform, which is a federally regulated prediction market.
Can you walk us through the difference between that, why sports books can only operate at the state level and why prediction markets are allowed to operate at the federal, national level? Because that's for someone like me who's listening, who probably when you listen to our podcast in December, that was me saying, I don't understand, because it's taken me kind of a while to understand the difference, how it all works and how it's regulated, really.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's a real battle going on now about how it ought to be regulated. But to really simplify it, basically the federal government has the right to oversee what's called event contracts, meaning any trades on the outcome of any real life event. So whether that's a trade on what the price of corn will be a year from now, or what's going to happen, with
the next Love Island winner.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say about that. But anyway, I think that the idea is if you're trading on what whether the Fed will cut rates, that is some real life event that you're trading on. And in many ways, sports are no different than that. The economy really runs on sports in so many ways. And there's real hedging utility of trading on sports. There's so many different use cases, whether it's like, if the Knicks take it to Game 7, the New York City economy really transforms, right? And so people have a lot to lose, whether it's businesses or individuals. And so prediction markets are built to serve economic interests of people trading on sports. And, so it looks and feels similar to sports betting, but it's structured as a financial exchange. So people might interact with these products in a similar way, but under the hood, they're built entirely differently. States regulate casinos, basically, and casinos have sports books, which is effectively a casino game that allows you to bet on whether sports events are going to occur, but only against the house. And what we basically do is, let's say just, to simplify it again, you want to place a $100 bet on the Knicks to win the championship next year. On sports books, it's when you're going to FanDuel, you're betting against FanDuel, the company itself. We're a platform, sort of similar to like StubHub or Airbnb, where it's just a public bidding to say who's going to give you the most for your $100 trade on the Knicks. And that's why it's better for you, whether that's a big hedge fund like Citadel or someone who might just think that the Knicks have no shot. That's why it's the most consumer friendly. So anyway, that's really the impetus for this big battle that's going on between the feds and the states.
I want to talk competition a little bit. Being at the World Cup at MetLife Stadium, I believe it's Kalshi that was just outlining the entire lower half of the field with advertisements, and Polymarket is another competitor. How do you intend to stand out? I see their advertisements all the time. I'm not very active on Polymarket or Kalshi at all, but in terms of how consumers see you, the commercials, the social media, the TikTok ads, where are you spending so that consumers are flocking to Novig and not your competitors?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think those two companies have certainly capitalized on being first movers. They've raised over $1 billion, but the real brand and the real product is built for elections, for wars, for crypto, and we're laser focused on sports. We want Novig to be synonymous with sports trading. We feel like our team and our technology is purpose built for sports. We've hired the best sports traders in the country to help build this exchange specifically for this use case. And, I think if you look at a platform like Kalshi, 85% of their volume's on sports. That's really by demand, not by design. Sure. I think when they talk about sports, it's in a laundry list of categories that they offer. Sometimes it feels like they're uncomfortable that they are predominantly a sports trading platform now. And so we really want to own the sports category. We're laser focused on the sports opportunity. We want to have the best user experience when it comes to sports trading, whether that's on parlays, our best in class points program that rewards you for trading on the platform. And from a brand perspective, how we show up, we want to show up in the biggest sports moments, to really be a part of the culture that defines sports in the U.S. And yeah, it is a competitive space. We also, I think, have a stronger sell to institutions and trading firms that are entering the space. I think we're going to have the most efficient markets, the most competitive fees, and have the deepest liquidity on our platform.
Last one from me. Do you think that your sports-centric focus on just being able to serve sports fans, do you think that gives you an edge in terms of having conversations with other sporting leagues who, or might be talking to the bigger ones, Kalshi and Polymarket, but they have, like you said, so many different offerings, as opposed to you, which is like, we just do sports and this is how we're going to do it. Do you think that gives you an edge when you're having those conversations?
100%. Yeah, I mean, for so many reasons. One is that I think the truth is some of those companies are seen, by many people as being a bit cavalier or sometimes not acting with the maturity that a financial exchange ought to operate with. So we really want to be leaders when it comes to trust and integrity of the platform. We're the first to have a robust, responsible trading framework directly in our rule book to make sure that the platform is, to really uphold the standards that we're really pioneering. Also, I think there are a lot of people who are just uncomfortable that these platforms let you trade on insider information. People are trading on wars and on whether some celebrity is going to say some certain word and you're on the red carpet and things that a lot of institutions are not as comfortable with. And we're saying Novig is just sports. We are, this is something that the overwhelming majority of Americans support the legalization of, that they, deepens their fan engagement. It's a part of American society, and we're trying to do this in the most fair and responsible way without touching some of the things that are a little bit thornier from a regulatory or from an optics perspective. So we do think it's more clean, and we think that is something that allows us to position ourselves in a way that's saying, we're not going to do things that you might be uncomfortable with. Pardon my French, but there's some platforms that allow you to trade on whether a sex toy will be thrown on a WNBA court.
Right.
Like, that's not something a financial exchange should be doing in the United States. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's crude. It also is so easily riggable.
Right.
And it's misogynistic, right? So I think we want to treat ourselves as being more thoughtful, more mature, and, real steward of the sports trading category.
Jacob Fortinsky, co-founder and chief executive officer of Novig. And I want to talk about your $8 billion annualized trading volume growing. The street is saying, damn, and I'm from Detroit. That's my street. That's why I'm saying that.
Main Street.
How high can the pot run for you guys?
I think this is going to be a tiny drop in the bucket when it comes to how big we'll be a year or two from now. We really just launched the federally regulated prediction market. That's going to unlock so much growth on our platform. I think by the end of football season, we'll be 5x where we are now. And I think a year from now, this category will be doing trillions of dollars of volume. I think it really will be the next wave of financial technology in the U.S. People are already familiar with trading on securities, and now they'll be able to trade on real life events. I think sports are the most important event in many people's lives, and that's the area we're initially focused on. But $8 billion sounds like a lot, but I think it'll be $8 trillion in a few years.
That was the CEO of Novig, Jacob Fortinsky. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports.
And don't forget to catch our podcast on all your podcast platforms, and go to Bloomberg.com to subscribe to the Bloomberg Business of Sports newsletter to stay up to date on all our juicy insights.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
But stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.